Before I start, I would like to say thank you very much to the organizer for inviting me to be part of this conference, especially to Dr. Rasid Mahmood. So it is my honor, actually, to be part of this conference. It is my pleasure. Thank you so much. All right, so today I'm going to talk about the language education in the digital age, leveraging student engagement in the CEFR-based English language teaching. It is a bit similar with Professor Lupin's talk just now, but it is from a Malaysian context. Right, due to this COVID-19 pandemic, which is very popular, the world was badly hit by this COVID pandemic in 2019, and it has been more than 2 years, and it is still with us right now. And due to that, conventional teaching is no longer practical. And with this MCO or movement control order or lockdown, okay, which was imposed due to this pandemic, students couldn't be on campus, we couldn't go to the office, so how could we have conventional teaching? How can we have face-to-face classroom? So, so what we need to do is that we need to turn into online teaching. Even though before the COVID pandemic, people were a bit skeptical with this online teaching. Before that, people were asking, can we really teach online? Will it be successful? Can students really learn using online teaching method? Almost, let's say, just 20%, not more than 20% use online teaching. But after the pandemic, it seems that 100% we have this online teaching for 100%, and in UTM we have been using 100% online teaching for about 3 to 4 semesters already. Even so this pandemic sometimes it's like blessing in disguise, like the speech made earlier by the patron-in-chief said, this conference with different locations is made possible because of these online technologies, and thank you to this pandemic. Yeah. Right. So the online teaching. Sorry. So the online teaching has become, the pandemic has become the cornerstone to this online teaching. So in Malaysia, UTM was one of the first universities that stood up and made the decisions in that, okay, we want to use online teaching, because at that time we faced a lot of uncertainties, and we got so many questions that we could not answer. And we were thinking about students' graduations, what about the program, what about the schedule, and we didn't know, okay, how long the pandemic will be here, how long will be locked down, and so no answers to that. So we bravely made a decision, say that, okay, we go for online teaching, even though I would say 70% of our staff were not ready for online teaching. So what we did was, we had so many trainings for our instructors. We had trainings almost every week, online teaching training almost every week for all of the instructors, to make sure that online teaching will be possible. So, but one thing in common, okay, but Alhamdulillah, we managed to get this the online teaching. But one thing in common that we face, okay, how do we get our students, engaged in online teaching? And it is like now, I feel like I'm talking to myself, I'm talking alone here. And just like in classroom, and students just keep quiet, keep silence, and we didn't know whether are they with us or where are they. And even there were lecturers who asked the students to on their camera and found out that the students were at the seaside. The students were somewhere else. So well, how could they, get involved with the lessons while they were somewhere else? And there was no way for us to guarantee whether the students were with us or not. They can just, on the WebEx, but they could be somewhere else or not listening to us. So that was the common question asked about the students' engagement. So the definition of student engagement given by Macquarie University Learning and Teaching is that the extent of quality with which students are committed and actively involved in their learning. So how do we guarantee or ensure that the students really involved or committed in in the lesson. So for online student engagement, so this has become the prolonged discussions among the educators. So how can we get students to be engaged in the lessons during online teaching? And online students need to be able to engage with their learning in an independent style. Maybe we cannot have like the one that we have in face-to-face. Maybe we need to have different ways of getting students to be involved in their lessons. So what we need to do is that institutions are responsible for creating environments that make learning possible. So it's up to the students, but we have to create the environment that will make the students, make it possible for the students to get involved in the activities. Okay, before I move on to this online engagement, so in Malaysia, we have this English language education reform, and we were given this roadmap, which is for 2015 to 2025. So in Malaysia nowadays, we are using a CEFR as our English language teaching curriculum. So we use CEFR for all levels, from preschool to tertiary levels. We start with preschool, where they start with A1, and then they move on to A2 when they are in primary school. And when they are in secondary school, they move to B1 or B2. For the higher secondary, they go to B2. Okay, so I would like to draw your attention to this university part. When they move into university, we expect them to be in B2 under CFR or C1, but at least B2. And for the teachers, language teachers need to have C1. Okay? So what is CFR? I believe that most of you know what CFR is. CFR is a common European framework of reference that we use to see the level of language competencies of language users. So for A1, A2, the basic users. For B1, B2, independent users. And for C1 and C2, they are proficient users. So for language, for university students, we hope students coming in with B2, where they are independent students, but that is not always the case. We also have students coming in with B1. So, but not many, about 30% of our students coming in with B1. So what we need to do is that we need to cater the students, and then we give them an extra course. We call it prerequisite, where all these students who did not achieve B2, they have to take one extra course for B1 students. So for B1, B2, C1, so we use the CEFR framework. So this framework has been used to come up with our teaching objectives. So we have for B1, students should be able to understand the main points of clear standard input or familiar matters. So something that they are familiar with, for example, about their work, their school, about their hobbies, and so forth. And they can produce simple connected text on topics which are familiar. Right? For B2 students, able to understand the main ideas of complex text on both concrete and abstract topics. So this is more towards academic, and able to interact with a degree of fluency and spontaneity to produce clear and detailed text. For C1, understand a wide range of demanding longer text. So this is more like advanced users, and recognize implicit meaning, able to express himself or herself fluently and spontaneously. But we got a very few of C1 students. Mostly they are B2 students. Since we have three categories of students, so we have three courses to cater three categories of students. For B1 students, they have to take English communication skills. And this course is not compulsory for all, only for students who are coming in and who did not achieve B2. For students who are B2 and other students, they have to start with academic communication skills before they can move on to the third course, that is professional communication skills. Professional communication skills is for students with B2 high to C1. Right, for both our first courses, we use textbook. Textbook Live is for B1 students, Pathways for B2 students. Right, so when we have the textbook, when we use textbooks in the class, we can have activities. We can engage students with activities. So we don't have the problems with students' engagement. So the passive contents can be active contents. But if we are teaching online, we are using the textbook, and how do we want to get students to participate? So this is the real problem faced by the teachers. This is the biggest challenge faced by the teachers, to get students to do the activities. Because sometimes when you call them, they just keep quiet. There is no way of checking whether they are there or not. So and then they don't on their camera, and then sometimes to ask you, then they will say that they have problems with the connection. Some students in the rural areas, you have to understand, these students, they are all over Malaysia, and sometimes they say, okay, I got problem with this internet, and that's true, because we have cases where students were caught by the police during a lockdown, and they went out to get their mobile data, to get their top up. Okay? So the problem here is that how can we turn passive contents or whatever materials that we have into active contents? So my students, Rubina Akhtar, she is doing PhD. She is doing on using content blended learning in teaching academic writing. So in her literature review, she found that the language is the biggest problem for students to write academic paper and academic essays. And when students do not have good language, it somehow rather affects their attitude. So they don't like academic writing because they don't have the language. Okay. And how to overcome this problem is looking at the teaching methods and strategies, as what Professor Lupi mentioned just now. We can use online learning, blended learning, collaborative learning, and task-based learning. So these are from her literature review. So she used content blended learning. So she gave her students the Padlet. So on the Padlet, she gave all the materials regarding the language, about language rules. Since, as I mentioned earlier, language is the biggest challenge for the students for academic writing. So she gave all these the rules, language rules, on how to write a paragraph, good paragraph, types of sentences, how to write a thesis statement, and but all the materials here, all these the rules here. But if you just give the students the materials just like this, the notes for the students, and do nothing, so it will just become passive content. So it will not do good for the students. So how can it help the students? So what she did was, she applied gamification. She used online gamification tools. She used Kahoot. So she had games with the students on language rules. And there are several online gamification tools that you can use, like for example, Kahoot, Educate Play, WorldWall, Socrative, Quizlet, Quizzes, Brainscape, and Mentimeter. And I believe there are many more, and that you can use to create activities, online activities with the students. So this is how we can get students to be engaged in the lesson. So, but in the end, it's not just a game. We have to be very careful when we create any activities, because ultimate aim is that we want students to achieve our objective. As I mentioned earlier, have I shown the objective of a B1 students is to be able to write a simple text and essay. So here, by having these activities, is for students to make sure that the students learn the language, the rules of the language, and they are able to produce simple connected text on familiar topics. As I mentioned earlier, for B1, they can talk something with the topic that they are familiar with. Okay, and in our third course, we have for professional communication skills, this is the objective is to produce a clear, systematically developed narrative of self by highlighting significant points and relevant supporting details appropriate in an online setting. So here, we ask students to come up with the resume. But with this pandemic, and then we see that mostly nowadays, people use video resume. So instead of asking students to come up with this paper printed or hard copy resume, we ask students to come up with a video or resume. Okay, And this is the resume that the students come up with. And so when the students, when they have to come up with a resume, they are engaged with the lesson. They have to use whatever they learn from in the classroom or from the resource books and turn into something practical, the video, to create the video. Okay? So once they have the video, we ask the students to upload on the YouTube. All right, and we ask the other friends to watch the video. Okay, how do you guarantee that the students watch the video, and how do you guarantee that they really get engaged with that activity? So one way of, make them watch the video and make them do something. So we have to create the task. So the task that we created is that we asked the students to come to do the peer review. So what they have to do, they have to watch their friends' video, and then they have to give feedback to their friends. Okay, what is this about, and how for the friends can improve the video. So this is how we make sure that the students, keep up with the activity and they really get along or get involved in the lesson. Okay, another material that we have is that to ask students to teach students on pronunciation. And if this kind of material for you to teach in the conventional classroom, it can be done because we can create activities. We can ask students, to work in group, to work in pairs, to say the words again and again. But how can we do that through online? So at that time, we didn't know about breakout rooms. So to change that, the activity to modify the activity, instead of having like in classroom asking students to practicing the pronunciation, so we asked the students to come up with the TikTok.
Hi guys, so today I'm going to show you how to pronounce English words with silent H. So the first one is honest. Honest is not wholeness, it's honest. Second one is our. Our is not our, it's our. The third one is what. What. It's not what, it's what. Same goes to when, where, and why. Next, we have school. School. School is not school, school. Last one is vehicle. Vehicle. It's not vehicle.
Okay. Despite doing something, the activity, and we can also by taking be involved in this also. This is the real world task. So it is authentic task. So they are not like doing something just for classroom learning, but they are also doing it for the real world. So they upload on the TikTok, and they get feedback from the audience. And we also give, like say, marks for number of likes. So say if you get more number of likes, we will give you bonus marks for that. So they ask your friends to watch their video just to get the likes. Yeah? So in a conclusion, I could say that, how do we get students to be engaged in online learning is that first, when we have the learning resources, we can have the conventional learning resources, for example, like textbooks. We can also use the modern one like digital resources, for example, like social media and many more. And what we need to do is that we need to turn these resources into active contents by having learning activities. So we can have gamification, we can have online discussion, online forums. There are so many activities that can be used. And if we use our e-learning system, we can create a forum, online forum, where we ask students to go in and to give their reflection and to say something, and everybody has to give reflection. But at the same time, we need to have learning support for all the universities. We need to have learning support for our teachers. We need to have the facilities. We need to have the technical support. And most important thing is training. So I found that the training is given by University of Technology Malaysia is very helpful we had, I would say that tremendous training sessions, but really helpful because we learned a lot, and we make them into practice, and we turn that into practice. But most important thing is for us to think about the assessment. Whatever we do, the resources that we choose and the activities that we created or we design should be able to achieve our teaching objectives. That is for the assessment. If we couldn't achieve our objectives, it will defeat the purpose. But because sometimes as teachers, we get carried away, we do all these activities in class, and then in the end we didn't know what kind of objective that we want to achieve. So all these learning resources, learning activities, learning support, and assessments should come in a package. Okay? So by that, these are the references, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. This session was indeed very informative.